This is Adam Bernard at AutoPerspectives, and welcome once again to our weekly news roundup. There was a lot of stuff happening in the auto industry this past week, a lot of product launches and a lot of strategic announcements, so much so that I'm going to hold off on a few things until next week, specifically Rivian and Lucid and some of Renault's new technology. But with that, it's not like we have a shortage of things to talk about. So let's dive right into it. And start by pouring one out for not one, not two, but three Honda electric vehicles, all using Honda's brand new, now officially dead Zero Series architecture. So rest in peace, the Acura RSX, the Honda Zero Series Saloon, and the Honda Zero Series SUV. Now, for years, my former colleagues and I used to joke that Honda was an engine company that happened to make cars. Unfortunately, with this move, that positioning is still kind of intact. That leaves Honda with one EV here in the US market, and that is the Prologue, which is technically a Chevy Blazer SS in Honda drag. So rather unfortunate. Honda basically said they felt the US EV market had become too challenging. And they were concerned about, where they were putting their resources. A lot of folks thought this was kind of an extreme overreaction. But let's get into some of what went on here. The Zero Series Saloon, I can kind of understand their concerns there. This is still largely an SUV market. The Zero Series Saloon, to me, looks kind of cool. To other people, it might look a little weird, a little too avant-garde. But that being said, even though the Zero Series Saloon is dead, the Afeela One, which is the Sony Honda mobility joint venture, the $90,000 vehicle, which is frankly not terribly competitive, is still alive for the moment. So I guess I might have been more willing to hang on to the Zero Series Saloon and ditch the Afeela, but they decided to pull the plug. The SUV is a little more surprising. Honda's crosstown rival Toyota just announced that they are taking one of their best-selling nameplates, the Highlander, and turning it into an EV-only entry. To me, that demonstrates a investment into the US EV market and a level of confidence. Toyota apparently is much more confident than Honda because Honda felt that the Zero Series SUV, either there wasn't going to be a market for it or this particular vehicle was not competitive enough. Now, we didn't get a lot of the specs. We knew it was an 800-volt architecture, that it charged 80% in 15 minutes. There seemed to be some clever technologies there, but for whatever reason, Honda felt that they were not going to be able to pull it off. And then the RSX was equally surprising. Both the RSX and the SUV were expected to be in market by the end of this year. So they really pulled the plug here at the last minute, which explains the write-off of something in the neighborhood of $15 billion. Well, we never saw the production version of the Zero Series SUV. We did see the production version of the RSX. So that car essentially was baked. We do know that Mercedes and BMW and Volvo are all coming out with new SUVs in this segment. Perhaps Acura didn't feel as competitive. Now, we do know that Acura recently pulled the plug on the ZDX, which was Honda's version of the Cadillac Lyriq, because that vehicle was not selling as well as the Prologue, and the RSX would have filled that hole in the Acura portfolio. So now it remains to be seen what Honda's US EV strategy is. So we'll have to wait for more news in this area. And again, it's been generating quite a bit of discussion online. It is worth noting that Honda is not abandoning EVs worldwide. They still have a number of EVs rolling out for China and for Europe as well. It's just in the US market where they pulled the big plug. So stand by for more news. And now we'll switch gears to Renault. Renault unveiled their Future Ready strategy. That is the successor to the Renault strategy that was unveiled in 2021. So that was their previous 5-year plan. This new 5-year plan is intended to take them to 2030. As part of that plan, the Renault brand will launch 26 new products by the end of the decade, including 12 in Europe and new entries in the C and D segment. So Renault wants to still have an entry-level presence, but also want to push the brand up market into some more profitable segments. Now, the Espace, the original Espace was launched in Europe in 1984, about a year after Chrysler's groundbreaking US market minivan. And the original Espace was a design and engineering pioneer, developed with Matra. More recently, because MPVs aren't quite as popular in Europe as they used to be, it was rebooted as a 3-row SUV. But as you can see here, with this R-Space Lab concept, a lot of folks are wondering if this is offering some clues into the next generation Espace. The work here has come from a group called Futurama. Within Renault, it's an innovation lab set up by the group working on technological advancements. It hopes to get into vehicles launching in the 2030s. As you can see, it's a more MPV-like silhouette, a very cab-forward proportion. Last year we saw minivan sales bounce back in the U.S. market, so maybe Renault is expecting a similar renaissance in Europe. We don't know yet, but there are some pretty interesting technologies, mostly focused on the interior, that were unveiled with this concept. The instrument panel is surprisingly reminded me of all things the Lincoln Nautilus. At first glance, I thought it was more like the BMW Panoramic xDrive, but it's not really a head-up type display. It's basically a large screen that runs full width. It's mounted somewhat far forward, not a touchscreen. They call it the Open-R Panorama screen. And then it's supplemented with a landscape-style touchscreen at the center of the IP, and that's similar to what Lincoln does with the Nautilus. You do get a yoke-style steering wheel, and that gives you a nice clear view of all the instrumentation, and it's tied to a steer-by-wire setup, which provides you better functionality and also better packaging. It is worth noting that China has already banned the deployable electric door handles for safety reasons and are looking at steering yokes for the same reason, like what Tesla offers. So again, this is far forward, so we may get a more conventional steering wheel in a production version. They've also moved the airbags from the instrument panel to the seats, and in doing so, freed up more space on the dashboard to include a multifunction glove box. There are sliding and folding individual rear seats, 90-degree opening rear doors. And so a lot of interesting features that are likely being considered for the next generation of Renault products, especially in the C and D segments. Meanwhile, over in India, we have the Bridger. If you are a fan of the Defender and Bronco and would prefer something a little more pint-sized, then Renault probably has an SUV for you. Unfortunately, it's only going to be available in a handful of markets, and certainly not North America. So you might not be able to get your hands on it, but it is a cool little runabout. Renault showed this concept, which, to be honest, looks just about ready for production. I don't really see anything here that's not doable. It's an India-designed small B-segment SUV that will be built in India in late 2027. It features, as you can see from the photos, a rugged, boxy exterior with a lot of diagonal graphic elements. Just like the vehicles that inspired it, it has an externally mounted spare tire with a side hinge tailgate. It leverages an updated and renamed R.I.P. That's the Renault Group emerging market platform that is designed to be multi-energy. So the production version of the Bridger would offer gas, hybrid, and EV powertrains, and that might vary by market. It would go on sale alongside the Renault Kiger, which is a little more car-like and also not electrified. Unfortunately, all we got today was exterior shots. We didn't get any technical details because we are over a year and a half away from launch. That wasn't a big surprise. So I would expect sometime early in 2027, we might get more details on this neat little runabout. And meanwhile, over in Dacia, it's been over 25 years since Renault purchased the Romanian automaker and announced plans to create, at the time, what was an unheard of 5,000 euros small car. Something that was, affordable, but didn't come off as like cheap and highly compromised. The original Logan was launched in 2004. It was an unmitigated success, and so Dacia continues to pile on the victories within the Renault group. The Sandero, which is their B-segment hatchback, is Europe's best-selling car. It has been for the past 2 years. They also can boast a 70% loyalty rate, and are now a viable feeder brand into parent Renault. So folks who might buy their first vehicle as a Dacia will eventually get a nicer job and a bigger family and make more money, and they want something a little fancier, and then they'll go over to the Renault showroom, and that seems to be the way Renault planned it to begin with. Part of the future-ready strategy included plans for Dacia. Electrification is not cheap. And right now, about 1/4 of all Dacias have some form of hybrid. The plan is to raise the level of electrification to 2/3 by the end of the decade. So still 1/3 will have a plain old internal combustion engine. Part of that plan will be more EVs beyond the existing Dacia Spring. There'll be 4 new EVs. They'll get a version of the new Twingo with Dacia's own design language applied to it, as well as an EV version of the next generation Sandero, which is due in a couple of years. Part of the new plan also includes an additional move up market. The Dacia Bigster was their first entry into the C segment. So while Dacia is still keeping their smaller vehicles, they want to move up market into higher margin vehicles. So the Bigster will be joined by the Striker, which is a neat little station wagon with some crossover-ish elements. Unfortunately, all we got today, as with the Bridger, were some exterior shots. There'll be more photos and details in June, so this will be on sale likely by the end of the year. We'll get information on powertrain and pricing as well. So there'll probably be a hybrid, probably not an EV at this point. It's got some neat stuff going on here, some cool lighting graphics. It's got that diagonal design element there on the door, kind of a newer approach to a traditional fender vent, which was all the rage about 20 years ago. I'm a big fan of wagons. I know they're not terribly popular here in the US, but they are so popular in Europe, and they seem to be gaining some traction in China as well. So this could turn out to be a nice volume seller for the brand. And we will finish up with Mercedes' new van, which they have nicknamed the Grand Limousine. It's been almost 3 years since Mercedes announced the VAN.EA EV skateboard for their next generation of commercial vehicles. And now the first entry off that platform is out. Now, previously, the passenger variants of the Mercedes vans were called the V-Class. These new vehicles will be called the VLE and the VLS, essentially MPV counterparts to the E-Class and the S-Class. The VLE was revealed today, and there's quite a bit of interesting feature and technology here on display. This is an 800-volt architecture, so it recharges up to 300 kilowatts. That'll give you about 175 EPA equivalent miles in 15 minutes. So again, not as fast as filling up with gas, but still a lot better than a lot of other vans out there. It comes in front drive or all-wheel drive configurations up to 409 horsepower, all using 115 kilowatt hour NMC or nickel manganese cobalt battery. Oddly, the one challenge here might be the door handles that I just mentioned when we were talking about the interior of the Renault R.Space lab. The flush door handles that have been banned by the Chinese government. If you watch the video for the launch of the VLE, it does appear that it has electrically deployable door handles. So either something's going to have to change before this goes on sale in China, or they're going to have to get themselves some sort of workaround. Under the skin of the new VLE, air suspension and 7-degree rear wheel steering. So a 35.75-foot turning circle is about 10% better than a Chrysler Pacifica, so nice and maneuverable in European streets. The sliding rear doors have fully retractable windows, so no half retractable, no window in a window. It rolls down just like a regular SUV or a passenger car. And because it's a Mercedes, you do get a full suite of driver assist technology supported by 10 cameras, 5 radar sensors, and 12 ultrasonic sensors. The interior does not look too dissimilar from other new Mercedes that have recently entered the market. You get the full-width super screen display for front seat passengers as well as the driver. There's also a retractable 31-inch panoramic screen for rear seat entertainment. Now, you don't get Chrysler Stow and Go type seats. You can fold them flat, of course, but if you want, the seats have 4 integrated wheels, so you can lift the seats out of the vehicle and then push them around on the driveway and push them into your garage for storage if you need to get a lot of cargo into your VLE. It looks like that Mercedes has checked all the boxes for what a premium minivan needs to be these days. If you go to China, a number of automakers, both legacy and startups, are offering vehicles in this segment. Lexus and Volvo, among others, are some of the key competitors. So Mercedes is looking to make a splash there, and they're looking to sell this vehicle in the US market as well. Beyond the VLE and the VLS, we'll also get a Vito, which is their commercial van. It will be interesting to see, given how nice the VLE is, what the VLS does to differentiate itself in terms of graphics and materials and lighting and options and features and tech and maybe even powertrain. Because when you talk about making the S-Class of minivans, you want to make sure it does not appear compromised. So we will probably wind up seeing that sometime in the next 6 months or so. And I would expect the VLE to show up in the North American market sometime next year. And that about wraps things up for Auto Perspectives this week. If you like what you've seen here, please subscribe and share, and check out AutoPerspectives.net for our blog. Next week, as I said, we'll discuss Rivian, Lucid, and whatever other news surfaces. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the week. I'll see you back here in 7 days. Thanks. Bye-bye.